And welcome to another episode of Nothing But That Sports Talk. I'm Murphy Luzon. And my special guest today will be Overtime Shay. She should be coming up any minute. Let me just try to see if I can get her to be on. Going live in T minus seconds. And hello, Overtime Shay.
Hey.
Very nice to meet you.
Very nice
Thank
to
you
meet
for
you
coming on the show on the Instagram Live in this very quarantining day.
Yeah, no.
What more can you do? Can you try to set your camera angle a little bit to where it is mine? Cause
you want me to turn it sideways?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay. The only thing I don't like about this angle is that I don't look into the camera because I have to look to the side. That's the only thing. But we'll make it work.
Yeah, I know. Now, on to the topics today. So, I understand that you work for Overtime. Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about what you do for Overtime?
Yeah, so I just started with Overtime a few months ago. And I discovered Overtime. My younger brother works with them, or used to work with them before I started working with them, and he used to tell me about Overtime all the time. He's like, Overtime's great. There's this guy named Overtime Larry. He's a really fun personality. And I started to look him up and go through it, and then I started to see it. But then when I went to the Overtime takeover, that's when I was like, oh, Overtime is a whole vibe. And I wanted to be a part of that vibe. So I'm the director of athlete and community relations. I deal with all the athletes and their parents, inviting them to our events, and also just making sure they have a tailored experience, that they enjoy what they're doing with us, and that they're well thought about. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. I do a bunch of things, but yeah, mainly just like players and families, just making sure they're comfortable and they have everything
that's
they
need. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Now, speaking of Overtime Larry, what do you think about Larry and Chloe's contributions to Overtime? And what does Overtime mean for the sports industry as a whole?
I think it's amazing. I think what Larry and Chloe bring are relatability, energy, excitement. I love them personally as people. They're very inspired. They're very inspiring. They're very driven. They can do a bunch of different things, from dancing to creating their own content on their social channels like TikTok and also Instagram. When kids see them out in the street, that's the most amazing thing, because it's not your traditional celebrity. It's like a celebrity that you feel that is your friend, and that's how Clary and Larry are perceived, and I just love it. And they just freeze. Kids freeze when they see them in the streets, or they cry, and it's so dope, and they just get really excited. So I love to be a part of that experience. But what they've done for the sport, I would say to have two people of color be in the face of Overtime is super dope for me. I know I would have loved that as a kid growing up, having a channel just for me. And our focus is our Gen Z audience. We have a super engaged audience, and I think we're the future of sports. We create our own content, and we connect with our fans in a way that I don't think anyone else does.
Yeah, and also I understand to have some more recent Overtime employees like Overtime Jess, who is originally from AfterBuzz TV. She's done a lot for Overtime. Like, what you thought about her contribution to the content?
Well, I think she brings a bubbliness, very lightness. I always see her interviewing guys on Overtime Next. I think she's very different in the aspect that she can really make you feel comfortable and really feel at home. And she has that crossover aspect, going into different sports. And she's not just, one sport specific. I think she's very versatile. So I think what Jess is doing is awesome. I'm so happy to have her part of the team.
Yeah, I know. And what else is awesome is that this last Sunday we had episodes 3 and 4 of the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. It's really told a story about how the Michael Jordan's Bulls dealt with the bad boy Pistons from 98 and 99 to the Dennis Rodman storylines. Like, what was more intriguing to you as a sports person and seeing the Michael Jordan documentary? Like, what are your favorite moments?
Okay, so since I'm an athlete-focused, athlete-first person, I was just watching their lifestyle, watching their mannerisms, watching their competitiveness. So I love to see the competitive inside practice. I liked to see how Jordan was always arriving first. You know, he always had his regimen, and then to see how the GMs and the players reacted. And it seems like the GMs and the players are around each other a lot more. It seemed like the organization was a lot smaller than the leagues now. A lot of the NBA teams are very big. So it seemed like back then in the NBA, everything was more close-knit. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see the different cars they drove, right? The old Porsches and the different cars that they drove was super dope. And then also just the rules and how they engage with the players. Like even Dennis Rodman going to Vegas for 48 hours, that would never happen in today's game. So that was very, very, very hilarious to watch and see him take a drink of a Michelob or whatever he was drinking and get on his motorcycle and go. I think we would roll over today if that happened in the NBA.
Yeah, I know. And actually, Michael Jordan starts in the NBA kind of reminds you of LeBron James start, with the only exception, LeBron James never lost in the first round. But Michael Jordan, even though he was out of his mind in Game 2, he got swept by the Boston Celtics. Of course, they only won 30 games going into that series, so that was way different. But then a couple years later, when you had to deal with the bad boy Pistons, like they literally, it took like 3 tries, but they finally got it done. But what really got me upset was the fact that the Pistons, everywhere except for John Sally, walked away, just walked into their locker rooms like the sort of losers they were. But John Sally really showed a lot of congratulations to his opponents. Like, he can deal with losing. He was a man that learned how to deal with losing, but the rest of the Pistons, they did not. I mean, considering how physical they were back then, could you blame them?
I can't blame them. I think, and I hate when people try to compare the two eras. You know, I hate say, oh, these guys from back then couldn't play now, guys from now couldn't play back then. It's just a completely different brand of basketball, a completely different NBA. Stakes were a lot higher back then, a lot more issues, racial issues, CBA issues, just a lot more things I felt like came into play than now. I think the league now is more structured. You know, they have allies, they have resources, they have people they can go to for stuff. So I just felt like they wore a lot more anger than normal. And so it seemed like it translated onto the court. Like there was just so many other things. Like when I learned about Scottie Pippen's background and where he came from, like he was playing for so much more. You know what I mean? Like he, you know, wasn't even on the team. Like he was like a manager for his college, and then he ended up getting a scholarship, and then he ended up getting drafted, and then, you know, playing with Michael Jordan and being a number 2. But really, Michael Jordan kind of, you know, elevated him as like, without me, there's no him. So I just felt like the stakes were a little bit different back then versus now. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention the fact that that whole storyline leading up to Michael Jordan's first ring, it just really told the story.
It was
like,
great.
even though I wasn't even, I literally just came into earth when Michael Jordan was about to be in the NBA Finals, winning 4 games out of 5 against Magic Johnson's Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, even though they lost Game 1, you were thinking, oh, they're not going to win. It was their first finals appearance ever. But you know what? When they got to the next 4 games, it was just clean sweep after that.
Right.
Like, what went through your mind watching that whole storyline with the Chicago Bulls in their first finals appearance against one of the more experienced NBA Finals teams in the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Magic Johnson?
So my POV was like, I just wish I was there. I wish I was older. I wish I understood. I wish I was more vested in that. I do remember the rumblings. I do remember the conversations. I do remember the arguments. But I just really enjoyed it. I really thought that it just seemed like a fairy tale. You know, like I love that they called it The Last Dance. I looked forward to it, you know, when it came out. And yeah, I just think what they played for was just way different than what's happening now. Like I felt like winning was so much more of a priority because they were also trying to break barriers. They were also trying to do things that a lot of basketball players hadn't done, you know. And I think they were trying to make the NBA what it is today. And so that's kind of what my POV was.
Yeah, and then the NBA was more physical. Right now, everybody can shoot threes in today's NBA. Everybody. Yeah. Even overtime Larry can shoot threes.
I think it was physical because it was different. It was still coming up. It was still developing into the brand that it is today. So that's why it was more physical, right? So you have to have things like Malice in the Palace to happen in order to create rules. So it's just one of those things where it was developing, right? When you make a mistake, people make rules after that, and then that mistake usually doesn't happen again. So I think today's NBA is just the product of that.
Yeah, imagine if they had replays back in that NBA. Like you would not see Michael Jordan and the Bulls and the Pistons get away with so many calls they got away from
No,
back then. You really
no.
would not, because that would all lead to like a lot of flagrants, a lot of fines. Like today's NBA, you got a lot of replays. They replaying buzzer beaters. They replaying flagrant fouls. They determine whether or not it's a flagrant one or a flagrant two, or whether or not it's an offensive foul or defensive foul. It's just so much evolution the NBA went through from the late '80s, early '90s to up until right now. Like,
and I'm okay. I'm okay with replays. I'm okay
yeah,
with them going back and trying to get it right. I'm okay with that because I felt like before refs could never be wrong, right? And when you do have the replay component, like, okay, I missed that. Now I can change it. You know what I mean? I thought it went off of white. Now it's off black. You know what I'm saying? So I'm okay with the new rules. I'm okay with that. What I hate is when there's blatant things like 6-step travels and things like that where they're committed by either James Harden or LeBron James or Corey Brewer or whoever it is, because it's a great play. I feel like they overlook certain things like that. That's the kind of little nitpicky things that annoy me. But at the same time, I'm like, it was a great play. So I don't know. I go back and forth with what the NBA is today. I don't know.
Okay. Well, now on to a different topic. Like, okay, what are your most favorite sports that you ever watched besides the NBA? Because I can tell by the conversation you love the NBA a lot. Are any other sports you're interested in?
Yeah, I love volleyball. I'm really interested in volleyball. I coached volleyball. I played volleyball in college. I think it's such a dynamic sport. I think it hasn't even reached the potential that it can be. I think it's so college focused right now. And I asked a volleyball player yesterday. Actually, I was on a Zoom call with a couple people doing some networking. But what I always want to know what volleyball players' end goals are. Like, when you play volleyball, are you doing it just to play for a scholarship and then finish your degree? What are end goals? Because I know if you play sports, like, a lot of people want to be pros. Not everybody wants to be a pro. I didn't want to be a pro just because I played in college, but I don't know. I'm always curious about what the end goal is for volleyball players, but also volleyball is so technical. It's not an easy sport to learn the rules. It's different when you play versus when you coach, and you'll notice that in the transition from being a player to coach, because in volleyball you're so focused on your position that you don't really understand the whole nuances of the game. So I just think volleyball is cool. It's very intricate, and it's always like a happy sport. You know what I mean? Like, we lose a point, it's like, all right, no problem, let's go, we got the next one. So that's what I loved about volleyball versus playing basketball.
Yeah, I mean, volleyball is very entertaining because, as somebody that actually covered volleyball I went to IU Brooklyn for undergrad, by the way, and I used to cover a lot of volleyball games for the school paper. And
yeah.
I've seen a lot of the teams striving their way to the NCAA tournament. Like, the hard work that these women volleyball players put into it, you just can't sleep on it.
Yeah, and how high they jump and how hard they hit the ball. Like, the athleticism in volleyball is just so underrated. I mean, that's from the women's game to the men's game. The men's game, how high their net is, how high they jump, how high they block. I mean, I just think it's super dynamic. So that's another sport I like to play and to watch, especially during the NCAA tournaments. That's what I love. And California is known for volleyball, and that's where I'm from. So I think it's part of me too.
Yeah, but you mentioned you live from California.
Hey,
what do you love about living in California as a person?
Well, I haven't lived in California for 4 years. I live in Philly, work in New York at overtime. But what I love about California is the weather, of course. But as a result of the weather, you just have happier people, right? You have people who feel like they have no worries. I've always got a smile on my face now, even no matter what temperature or weather I'm in. But at the same time, it's just a different vibe. Like, you can always plan your day to go outside. You don't have to look outside and see if it's snowing or look outside and see if it's overcast. You will have your really hot days. You will have some overcast days, but you'll be grateful for those because it's always sunny. I love going to the beach. I think I could have done a lot more when I lived there. And I definitely appreciate it now. So when I go back, I try to go to the beach every single day at some point or see it. California it's just a beautiful place, and it's just a different vibe you feel, and dressing differently. You don't have to have that many layers. You don't have that much clothes. You barely own a jacket. I didn't own a jacket before I moved to the East Coast. So California is just a beautiful place.
Yeah, and getting back to overtime, as you talked about earlier, I see a lot of videos, and overtime is a very promising aspect to the future of many sports broadcasters and sports athletes,
Yeah.
including Overtime Trey, who recently just left Overtime. I mean, he, he's like basically one of the people who like one of the reasons why I found out about Overtime. I'm like, oh, this looks tough. This looks pretty nice.
Trey's
like,
my brother. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, sorry about Overtime Trey having to leave. I mean, I understand he's done a lot. I mean, he put in a couple years of work for Overtime.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a bright future.
And I'm seeing a lot of Overtime people around Rucker Park and Diamond when I was covering the Basketball Billiards League games, doing this publication, Nothing But That Sports Talk. And that was where I met Overtime Chloe. I mean, I got close to Overtime Chloe at an open gym and basketball run that Nia Rose, who played for one of the teams at the Basketball Billiards League. It was just incredible how broad they are to the sports industry.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of
Chloe's a killer.
A lot of talent. You know, they have promising futures, and they have a lot of things that they want to do. So, you know, Trey is resilient. He's a basketball player. He's gonna do so many great things, and I can't wait to see what he does. You know, I talk to him about basketball all the time.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what he does too. But if you was like to like choose somebody to work for Overtime, what do you look for in people looking to get into Overtime?
Passion for the game, empathy. You know, people who are good with people, personable, enthusiastic, very kind people. You know, no ego. Yeah, just a really well-rounded person that brings good energy and that can fill people up with their presence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like with every other media publication in the world. I mean, I found out about Overtime because I found out this lady, Christina Williams, attended an Overtime event over a year ago.
Hi, Ann.
I see a lot of your people's coming on the Overtime interview. Well, it's from
I have amazing friends and amazing people, so I'm always happy to see them.
And when you put in a lot of work, these are the type of friends you get to meet in the industry.
Seriously.
Now, getting back to my story, I mean, well, I also found out about it because Ario Chalmers and Christina Williams, some people that I interviewed for my podcast, like literally in the fall of 2018, were at a private Overtime event, and that was a Rachel Demena, who's like a former MTA 2K TV host, was over there. I mean, I've seen videos and footage of it. I was like, wow, Overtime is really broad. Like,
right?
Christina Williams really knows most of these people. and getting back to Overtime Trey, he put in some serious work at the Nike JDI Classic, winning championship at that event at Nike headquarters. I was there for it live. The guy got game. You see the highlight reel.
He belongs in the NBA. He belongs in the NBA. He needs to be NBA Trey.
I mean, due to the stories that I was told about Overtime Trey, it's a shame he only played college basketball briefly, but you know what? He got college basketball experience.
Yeah, and maybe there needs to be a way for guys who didn't go the traditional route who are not, you know, young anymore, but who still have NBA potential to go to the NBA. So you have to figure that out. We have to figure out the blueprint.
Yeah, and I love the fact that Overtime Chloe's doing all these Instagram live interviews, which inspires me to do what I'm doing right now with you, like interviewing people, getting in contact with people. Like with the quarantine going on, this is a great chance to continue building your craft towards a potential job in the media industry to get to where you're standing right now. I mean, not you in particular, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah, and I think sports is all about human connection in general, right? The more you reach out, the more you don't know what's going to happen in the universe. But if you keep yourself open, like we didn't know each other before this chat, but you found it in you just to message me and say, hey, do you want to do an interview? You know, I said, sure. What are we going to be talking about? We had, a few chats and here we are. And I think that's all it's about. It's just being brave, being confident in what you do, and putting your best foot forward. And you never know what can happen in the sports industry, but you have to be super active. You have to be motivated. You have to be consistent and persistent, and things will happen for you. That's the thing. You just can't take no's for an answer, or okay, they didn't answer, or maybe they didn't respond back, or you just have to keep going no matter what.
Yeah, and if you looked at my interviews I've done for my podcast in the past, up until like just literally last weekend, you would know that I've been active in interviewing people for this publication because it's a good way for me to get my foot in the door. I've interviewed Monica McNutt, who also does some stuff for Overtime, as I noticed. Monica McNutt really knows her basketball when I interviewed her.
Look at my page. Hilarious. Hi, Alex. Yeah, so Monica McNutt, I literally met her this year, and I think we have very similar. Like, I recognize her light. I recognize her energy. I felt like that was my sister. As soon as I met her, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna love this woman. I'm gonna enjoy being around her. Every time she comes in the office, she gives me a huge hug. We just share and say, "What you been doing? What you been doing?" And she'll tell me what she's doing. I'll tell her what city I'm going to, what city I'm traveling to. And I watch all her broadcasting, and I'm just so proud of her. She makes content on her own. She's a fitness guru. I mean, I would say she's really into fitness. She does a ton of stuff, and I really look up to her, and she inspires me. And I'm really excited to have people like her a part of Overtime. And it's another reason why I love Overtime, because it's such a vibe, and the type of people that we employ and the type of people that we are associated with are just really good, fun people. And I think that's what a company should be about: great culture and great people.
Yeah, and it's also about keeping up with keeping the consistent pace of building your craft.
Yes. And knowing what the market is offering, knowing what's going on, knowing about the G League transitions, knowing about the NCAA rules changing, and adjusting to the world of basketball versus complaining. Why did they change this or why did they do that? Okay, well, this is the new rules, and this is how we're going to find, corner the market in a unique way.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the WNBA draft was a couple weeks ago. They couldn't do it in person at the Nike J Classic because of what, but the fact that you see Sabrina Ionescu get drafted to the New York Liberty, along with Megan Walker and a couple of Sabrina's teammates get into the WNBA. You can see the impact. Like, you can't wait to see the impact they're going to put into the league when everything comes back to normal. Sabrina Ionescu, I feel, is going to change the face of Liberty basketball and also WNBA basketball because the stats she put up in college. I mean, sadly, she wasn't able to win a championship. But you know what? Sabrina, I feel, is the women's version of Zion Williamson.
Sabrina
is the game.
She's going to change basketball in general.
Exactly.
Like what Kobe did for the game by endorsing so many WNBA players, so many women's players, so exposing other sports who are just Kobe Bryant fans in general, who may not necessarily be basketball fans, has done so much. And then I feel like without that kind of endorsement, you don't get the same kind of love. You don't get the same kind of connection that you get had he not done that. But Sabrina Ionescu is going to change the face of basketball in general. I mean, the fact that in college she sold out her college jersey, that just lets you know when she's able. Now, I mean, a lot of people can or will be able to monetize off their image and likeness, but what she's going to do for companies and for brands and just for the sport of basketball in general is going to be amazing. I think she has a crossover ability into the men's game. I think she's going to do a lot of collabs with men's sports, whether that's basketball, whatever. I think it's just being an elite athlete. I read an article about her and her brother. They came up through the game together and they're really close and they challenged each other. They played one-on-one all the time. So I think Sabrina's just a transformational generational player. I think she's going to be good for the game of basketball just in general as a whole.
Yeah, it's the same thing I think on Tia Charles going to get traded to the Washington Mystics, who won the championship last year. But you know what? It is what it is. That's just how things go. I mean, it's for like a pass the torch moment because Tia Charles, they only won like 9 games last year. But you're playing for the World Championship. You're playing for the World Champions alongside a couple other Washington Mystic players. It's just, you can't really sleep on that. Like, how would you turn down an opportunity to play for last year's champions and try to help them win back-to-back champions? Because Tia Charles is a former MVP. She deserves better than that.
It's sports, though. I mean, you only can control what you can control. Unfortunately, some of those things were out of the control.
Yeah, and speaking of sports, like, what are your impressions of the NFL draft if you watch it?
I didn't watch it. Only because I'm still working from home, so I have a lot of other projects. But I knew that as a company, we were going to recap on things. I knew I was going to see little clips on social, so I didn't want to block out that much time, and I didn't want to get too invested over that many days. But I think that the sports network's pivoting, and I heard that it actually went really well. And so I'm just proud as a sports fan that no matter what happens, we figure it out, and that the game doesn't stop, never stop. Sports don't stop, even though we literally can't be together. So.
Yeah, but what are plans for Overtime after the pandemic is over?
Oh, I mean, we have a lot. I mean, we have been releasing more content than we ever have. So I think just continuing to crank out new content, to learn from the quarantine, to learn from people's habits, how they're consuming content. I think to just stay current and stay with what's working, and kind of try to make adjustments, be innovative, be first to the market, and just continue to build our community and continue to connect with our fans and be there for people, and be that brand that is always a part of the conversation. So I think we're headed for greatness. I know that.
Yeah. The future of sports post the pandemic is going to be insane, especially with overtime going around. And I understand you guys were at the All-Star weekend just last February, and I saw the footage. You guys were all over the place.
We were all over the place.
Oh man, I'm not even surprised because it's the All-Star weekend, and it's like the most important All-Star weekend of all, because in the game you're paying tribute to one of the greatest players except for the basketball court, and win 5 championships and 7 appearances. Rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. What are your thoughts about Kobe Bryant being in the Hall of Fame alongside Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett?
What do I think about it? I think it's phenomenal. I'm so sad that he couldn't witness his induction. But I think in the back of his mind, he knows, like, he literally is the second coming of Jordan. Like, when I watch the Jordan documentary, I'm like, that's Kobe, like, just the swag and the work ethic, and even the storyline, being coached by Phil and Tex Winter and all these other people who were very integral in their lives. And I just think that it's crazy to think that he could have a similar career and a similar swag to, the person we consider to be the best basketball player, or arguably the best basketball player to play the game. And I just think that Kobe did so much for the sport after he played, which was kind of dope, and I didn't see coming. And so that's the part I'm sad about, hearing all the accolades and the things he was able to accomplish after he was done playing. Because I think, the argument was always like, oh, Kobe's selfish. Oh, Kobe shoots too much. But that was part of his competitive nature, and part of him just being like, give the ball to me. But then in life, you really found out that Kobe was a softie. He was more romantic than his wife. He loved getting home to drive his kids to school. He loved, watching women's basketball. And that's the evolution of Kobe that I loved, and that I would like to hear him talk more about, and like hear people talk about it. And we will be able to hear other people talk about it. But I would have liked to hear him, talk about it. So that's the kind of part I'm sad about, is not being able to hear that part.
Kobe Bryant is one of the reasons why you have to be an advocate to women's basketball and do some kind of coverage of women's basketball, because covering women's basketball can get you into the door to covering men's basketball sometimes. And also, not to mention the fact that he has a lot of girl daughters. One of them who died along with them could have been the future face of the WNBA, the same way Paige Buckert is going to be the future of the WNBA when she gets there, alongside Sabrina Ionescu. We already talked about her. For those of you who are just tuning in, you can rewatch it when I post on YouTube. But you know what? Women's basketball is important. Women in sports is important as a whole.
And basketball is basketball, right? It's the same.
Exactly.
It's the exact same. And that's what Kobe was trying to say, is that it's basketball. It doesn't matter if a woman is playing it or a man is playing it. It's basketball. And so I think you just have to switch the lens, or just the perspective, and say, okay, they're playing the game the same way with a couple different adjustments, but basketball is basketball. Gotta
exactly. Love it. So, thank you for stopping by Overtime Shane. I look forward to interviewing you again and speaking with you again in the future. And we hope to link up once this whole pandemic is over.
Absolutely.
And thank you guys that tune in for Nothing But That Sports Talk on Instagram Live. Get your head in the game and stay safe.
Thank you for having me. Later.